Dear students, today we will discuss about fourth type of reaction, that is double displacement reaction. In double displacement reaction, there is an exchange of ions between reactants. So all of you know that there are two types of ions, cation and anion. As you can see here in this figure, there is switching of cations and anions of two different compounds. Switching is taking place. These are the two compounds, two reactants, and here you can see that switching of cations and anions have taken place. It is clearly shown here. So two displacements are taking place here. Let us understand this reaction by an activity. If you remember, we have discussed this particular activity earlier also, that is the reaction of sodium sulfate and barium chloride to form white precipitate of barium sulfate and sodium chloride. As here a precipitate is formed, this reaction is also known as precipitation reaction. So here you can see that sodium from the sodium sulfate displaces barium present in barium chloride and forms sodium chloride, and in the same way barium displaces sodium from sodium sulfate and forms barium sulfate. So there is an exchange of cations and anions between two compounds, and this is an example of double displacement reaction because the displacement is taking place twice. That is why it is known as double displacement reaction. So let us go for a recall activity. So what is happening here? You are given a test tube and a solution of lead nitrate is given to you, and potassium iodide is also there, and you are instructed to mix together both of them in a test tube. So let us try to give answer of this activity. What was the color of the precipitate formed? Here in this particular reaction, a precipitate is formed and you are asked that what is the color of the precipitate which is formed. It is yellow precipitate which is formed in this particular reaction. And can you name the compound which forms the precipitate here? This particular reaction is an example of double displacement reaction. Write the balanced chemical equation for this reaction. Here is the balanced chemical equation for the reaction, and as you can see that potassium is replacing lead from lead nitrate and lead is replacing potassium from potassium iodide. So it is an example of double displacement reaction. So now one more type of chemical reaction is there, that is oxidation and reduction reaction, and they are known as redox reactions. So what is happening in oxidation? In oxidation there is addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen, and those reactions are known as oxidation reaction, while in case of reduction reaction there is addition of hydrogen or removal of oxygen. Let us come to an example. It is very clearly mentioned in this particular reaction. Here you can see Fe2O3 combines with carbon monoxide and it forms iron, and carbon dioxide is formed. So if you see Fe2O3 in the reactants, Fe2O3 is present, and when it gets converted into the product, there is the removal of oxygen and iron is formed. So the removal of oxygen is the reduction reaction. So this particular reaction is the reduction reaction. Let us come here with carbon monoxide. Here you can see carbon monoxide is here and carbon dioxide is formed in the product. You can see an addition of oxygen is happening over here, and this particular step is known as oxidation. So because in this particular example both reduction and oxidation are occurring at the same time, such reactions are known as redox reaction. Let us learn oxidation and reduction through some activities. So how the activity goes for oxidation: 1 gram of copper powder is taken in a china dish. The copper powder is brown in color. It is placed on a tripod stand, is taken, and a wire gauge is placed over it, and above it this particular copper powder is placed in the china dish. Bunsen burner is kept down and the heating starts. So what observation is seen? The color of the copper powder turns black from brown. Initially it was brown in color. As the heating continues, the color changes from brown to black. So what are the learning outcomes which are observed? Here the solid copper powder burns in the presence of oxygen. You can see here in this particular reaction, copper is combining with the oxygen present in the air in the presence of the heat, and copper oxide is formed. This particular copper oxide is black in color. Since copper is adding oxygen in itself, this particular reaction is an example of oxidation and copper oxide is formed. Now comes the activity for reduction. Now if hydrogen gas is passed through this heated copper oxide, the black copper oxide now turns into brown copper and a reverse reaction takes place. You can see here copper oxide, when hydrogen is passed over copper oxide in the presence of the heat, a reverse reaction which we have studied just now in the earlier slide, a reverse reaction of that particular reaction is taking place and copper is formed and water is formed. So you can see here copper oxide, removal of oxygen, copper is formed. This is the case of reduction. Here in case of hydrogen, oxygen is added up and water is formed. This is the case of oxidation. So what is the learning outcomes? Copper oxide loses oxygen and turns into copper. It is reduction. In this reaction, copper oxide is said to be reduced and hydrogen is said to be oxidized. Together, both oxidation and reduction are taking place together. So it is an example of redox reaction. Other examples are when zinc oxide combines with carbon to form zinc and carbon monoxide. Clearly you can see from zinc oxide oxygen is removed, so zinc is reduced. Reduction is happening over here. In the carbon, oxygen is added, so oxidation is happening over here. Next example is when magnesium oxide reacts with hydrogen chloride to form magnesium chloride, water and chlorine gas is evolved. Here magnesium oxide is reduced to magnesium chloride, whereas hydrogen chloride is oxidized to chlorine. Now let's take a recall activity. If you remember, we have studied in earlier activities where magnesium ribbon was burned in the air. So that was the reaction of magnesium with oxygen to form magnesium oxide. So which compound was formed there? Magnesium oxide was formed. So whether magnesium was oxidized or reduced in that particular reaction? Yes, it was oxidized because oxygen was added in that reaction. So now let us now discuss some effects of oxidation and reaction which we see in our daily life. You must have observed, students, whenever your mother cuts fruits like apple, the surface becomes brownish in color. So that is nothing but oxidation is happening over there. Some other examples are formation of metal oxide on metal, like rusting of iron. The silver items present in your home, they turn blackish in color. Copper item get a green coating over them. They all are known as corrosion. So what is corrosion? The process in which metals are eaten up gradually by the action of air, moisture or chemicals on their surface. We are going to study this corrosion and oxidation later in another chapter of chemistry. Burning of crackers, that is also an oxidation reaction. Rancidity. What is rancidity? Many questions are asked in board regarding this rancidity also. So the spoiling of food material due to slow oxidation is known as rancidity. Food material means, from here food material we mean the materials or food item which is made from oil. So the food material containing oil or fats, after some time if you will observe that if suppose you are having a chips packet and you open it up and you don't consume it, after some time you will observe some foul smell or some foul taste you will observe when it is left as it is for longer time. So what is happening over there? The food material starts oxidizing, and this whole process is known as rancidity. So have you ever thought, children, that buy that chips packet which you buy, Lay's packet, potato chips packet, it is why that particular packet is solemn kind of, what is filled in that particular packet when you buy it from the market? That particular packet is filled with nitrogen gas which prevents the chips inside the packet from getting oxidized. Okay, so that particular nitrogen gas acts as an oxidizing agent and prevents rancidity of the food material. So with this, students, chapter 1 chemical reaction and equation completes, and we have covered each and every activity of NCERT also. So stay safe, stay indoors, and thank you very much.